Iron Maiden alive!
Hey everybody, welcome to Grab a Stack of Rock and another episode of 50 Years of Iron Maiden. Here we are at episode 18. Now, the last few episodes, you've only seen Harrison and myself. We kind of did them as duo episodes. We have Jake, not from State Farm, here with us as our first guest since our little drought of guests. Jake, thank you for coming and spending an evening here on 50 Years of Iron Maiden.
Thank you guys for having me. I've been so excited to be on Grab a Stack of Rock for what feels like forever. I just adore you guys. And my get up today is the first time I ever saw Blaze. He was it was on the Doro 20 Years of Metal concert, and he was wearing sleeveless and a beanie. And I was like, so I'm gonna imitate Blaze's get up. Well, I'm on Grab a Stack of Rock tonight.
So full disclaimer for the folks watching, I know there's been some trepidation as we head into the 1990s, but Harrison Kopp obviously is an unabashed Blaze Bayley fan. We all know that about him. Jake is also a Blaze Bayley fan, and I think it's fairly safe to say that I too am a Blaze Bayley fan. So if folks are hoping for a bashing of the Blaze Bayley era, they're not going to be getting that tonight. Spoiler alert. But we are going to be talking about a very divisive era in Iron Maiden. We've had basically now this is the third really seriously divisive album in a row after No Prayer for the Dying, Fear of the Dark, and now The X Factor. So we have some big changes. I'm just going to run through some of them. And we're also going to hear from Blaze Bayley himself. More on that later. But The X Factor, recorded late 94 to August of 1995 at Steve's Barn, once again, by Steve Harris and Nigel Green. First album since the debut without Martin Black Knight Birch. They did no demos for this album. More on that in a bit. It was released October 2nd, 1995, a date I remember very well when I bought my original copy of The X Factor, which I still have, having upgraded to the Japanese 2 CD edition. I still have my original 95. Now, this did not do particularly well in terms of sales. Number 64 in Australia, number 8 in the UK, number 157 in the United States.
But what about Quebec?
Harrison anticipated my next point. I don't have the chart numbers for Canada. I wasn't able to find them in time, but I do recall that this album did very well in the state of Quebec, where it went to number 8. And I remember a kind of snarky blurb in a magazine at the time saying, well, this does prove that Quebec is indeed a unique culture. And that was a very big deal at the time. For context, Canadian separatism, they had a referendum to separate the province of Quebec due to their unique culture. So that was kind of a joke based on the politics of the time. Now,
it is worth noting that there was a global slump in sort of metal and hard rock sales. It wasn't just Iron Maiden feeling the brunt of this. It was Priest. It was
Motley Crue, David Lee Roth, everyone. And it was most everyone. Obviously, certain ones like Metallica continued to do well. But there was a seriously big plague in hard rock of major members, usually the lead singer, leaving the band. So we had Bruce Dickinson record the Balls to Picasso album, which, by the way, as of today's recording, was just announced in a new remixed, remastered, re-recorded edition. So that'll be cool. That'll be old news by the more money. That'll be old news by the time this airs. But he was off. He basically found the Balls to Picasso process very freeing and felt like he needed to pursue that direction. And the only way that he could pursue it was to leave Iron Maiden. They still had a tour lined up. We talked about that in prior episodes. That went as well as it did, and then it was time to look at lead singers. I understand that Doogie White, who later ended up in Rainbow, was the second runner-up, but they ended up with Blaze Bayley of Wolfsbane. Now, how did Blaze feel about being hired? Well, turns out that some of the singles for this album, what we'll talk about, have interview clips from Blaze Bayley, and we're going to be playing some of them tonight as a bit of a sample. So this is from the Man on the Edge B-side. Blaze is asked how he felt about being asked to join Iron Maiden.
How did you feel when you finally learned that you'd got the job in Maiden?
Relieved more than anything.
Because there was a bit of a while, where it was.
Well, I had to audition just the same as everybody else.
That's all right.
So I was probably not. I just thought I didn't think really. I thought I had a chance as much as anybody else because I'm quite a determined person. But I thought, I'll never get it, because it's such a dream job. It's something that you think about it now. So I was just relieved more than anything that all the anxiety and worry and think, will I get it? Won't I get it? What? So I just it was like, are you sure? Are you sure? Just to make sure it's me. Yeah, you found the right person. You sure? And then I just spent about 3 days getting completely drunk and staying drunk.
So Blaze Bayley, a distinctly different voice from Bruce Dickinson, very much a baritone rather than an air raid siren.
That sounds like Keith Wilford of the fan club interviewing him as well.
I didn't check, but
cared about who the other voice was. But yeah, there are some sensationalist headlines at the time, being like, Blaze Bayley says Bruce Dickinson leaving Iron Maiden was the best thing to ever happen to me, and that sort of thing. If you go back and look at some of the metal magazines, they were really sort of playing it up. But Blaze comes along far more pensive and reserved in that interview than in the magazine headlines.
And humble, I would say too.
Mm-hmm. Oh yes, very.
So we will get into all of the different aspects of Blaze Bayley being a member of Iron Maiden as we go through these songs. But as we do, we always start with track one. I think we're just about ready to delve into this album, The X Factor. So, Jake, not from State Farm, without further ado, we're going to talk about track one, the Steve Harris solo right, Sign of the Cross, the album epic. Your thoughts, sir?
Well, you guys said X Factor, so I thought we were talking about X Factor X.
Thanks for joining the show, everybody. We'll be back next week to talk about the X Factor.
No, I did bring my Japanese X Factor. Can I take a moment to appreciate the artwork?
We usually talk about the artwork at the end.
Okay. So, Sign of the Cross. That's a dark and brooding song. I was very fortunate enough to see this live the one time I saw Iron Maiden on the what was it? Legacy of the Beast tour in 2022, and that was the showstopper. I don't think any other performance that night came close to taking what they did. They brought out everything for that song, and it was. And again, here on this album, I think it's a showstopper. It's the highlight of the album. I know some people say it's better when Bruce sings it, but I think there's a little bit of a Blaze has that deeper voice, and so he gets that darkness that I think Bruce has can get that sinister vibe, but Blaze has a darkness and a more menace to him with those lows that he gets. And I
compare their versions of Afraid to Shoot Strangers, for example, is sort of the best way to look at it.
Yes, and Blaze really, really belts this song out there, and it's got these ups and downs, and it's a nice long, what is it, almost 12 minutes long of prog metal. This isn't the metal of No Prayer for a Dying or Fear of the Dark, which I'm going to be honest, aside from Wasting Love, I don't think there's a great song on those two albums. I think there's good songs. I don't think there's a great song. And maybe at one point I really liked Fear of the Dark, but I don't anymore. I'm tired of it. This is a great song. It's proggy. It's got tempo shifts. It's got ups and downs. Lyrically, it's a pretty deep and dark lyrical content. I think with this album, and I'll probably bring this up again, this album is where modern Iron Maiden was born. It wasn't born on Brave New World like a lot of people think. modern Iron Maiden with that proggy vibe and those ups and downs and highs and lows and long time songs with unique time signatures. It was all born on this first Blaze Bayley record, and it started with the very first song, Sign of the Cross. And I think it's one of Maiden's best, not just on this album, but you could throw it up against any Bruce Dickinson song, any Paul Di'Anno song, any version live or studio, and I think it's a highlight. And I think Blaze does a phenomenal job. He's not Bruce Dickinson. He wasn't Bruce Dickinson. Todd LaTorre's not Jeff Tate. He's never going to be. But Blaze Bayley on this record did a phenomenal job, and I think he knocked it out of the park on Sign of the Cross.
Very well said. One thing I would like to point out, and just to underline what you said, is Blaze's baritone brings that darker tone to it. And yes, I love Bruce's version of Sign of the Cross. We'll talk about that when we get to that album. But as far as this recording goes, you know, there's something really guttural about Blaze's approach. Certain lines that I love. Why then is God still protecting me even when I don't deserve it? You know, it's like something, he's got some powerful lungs. Like, he may not have that range of Bruce, but he's got so much bellow power. And when we hit to that chorus, the sign of the cross, there's so much power there, just as much power as Bruce would have delivered, just that he would have delivered it in that higher range. Now, as far as lyrics go, I believe this is very loosely based on The Name of the Rose, which I didn't ask my dad for a quote this time. He told me it's one of the most horrifying films that he's ever seen, The Name of the Rose with Sean Connery. But I don't think the lyrics are quite following the story of the film. I'm not 100% sure on that. But it's very interesting when you get to the end of the song. And basically what we have is this monk, let's say, who's being punished for ungodly thoughts or deeds or whatever he's done to break the rules, and he's being punished. But then after his punishment, lost my love of heaven above, and he's found his lust for the earth below. So what they've done is they've driven him away from his faith, which I find is a fascinating aspect of that lyric. What else did I want to say about this song? Oh, Gregorian chants, of course. Gregorian chants were big in the early 90s. They had the Benedictine monks had a hit CD out, and I would know. I was working retail at the time, and it was a double album of Gregorian chants. And there were spoof albums of Gregorian chants doing Nirvana songs. I remember that one very distinctly. The monks chanting Gregorian versions of Nirvana. But I think when a band like Iron Maiden puts out a new album, you want them to go somewhere new. They haven't always done that. They've sometimes purposely gone backwards. But here we're seeing Iron Maiden take some bold steps into territories that they've never gone before. And using these Gregorian chants is one example of many that we'll get into. But I agree with everything Jake says here. This is an epic that goes up against anything Bruce has done. No disrespect intended. It's a magnificent song. As usual, I have played these albums. I played it 30 times in the last 2 weeks to prepare for this show, and I still love Sign of the Cross, which doesn't leave much for Harrison, but have at it, my friend.
Well, yeah, awesome song. A really great opener, despite its length. It is the longest song on the album, but I think it's placed best as the opener because anywhere else that Gregorian chanting at the start would have bogged down the listening experience. But here it's just sort of building ambience before the album kicks off. Blaze brings, as you've mentioned, this really expressive power baritone, even though he doesn't have the same range as Bruce. That soloing section, that really long soloing section, it's peak Maiden. As Jake pointed out, yes, this is where modern Iron Maiden was born. And even if you're not sold on this version, because let's talk about the production very briefly. Produced by Steve Harris and Nigel Green. Well, where did Nigel Green come from? For the longest time, I'm like, who is this Nigel Green? Turns out he was the engineer on The Number of the Beast, which was his last job as an engineer before he became a full-on producer. And now Iron Maiden have a habit of working with people that they're familiar with. Simon Dawson from British Lion. Nico Trust supported Iron Maiden on their tours before he joined. Blaze, Wolfbane supported Iron Maiden before their tours. Nigel Green was their engineer on Number of the Beast. Adrian was known by Dave. They were mates before that. So Iron Maiden generally always go for someone that they know, and Nigel Green is part of that. I think Steve also had a lot of input on the production as well, because Steve being Steve, it's Steve's band. But anyway, back to Sign of the Cross. If for some reason you're not fully sold on the song, go listen to Blazer's version from Fulham 2003. It is by far the best version of the song. You can find it on his Bandcamp, and you know, Iron Maiden, Blaze mentioned a year or two back, Iron Maiden made a purposeful decision on the X Factor not to bring their traditional twin guitar harmonies. They left that out of it. So when Blaze came back to do some of these songs live during his solo years, he added these harmonies back in. And with a little bit of guitar harmony here and there, Sign of the Cross just gets even better.
Right on. You talked about the production a bit. I have some info from Blaze on that. As I mentioned earlier, they didn't do any demos. So before we jump into track 2, let's hear from Blaze a little bit on the demo, or the, I guess you'd say, working up the album and starting to record.
Did it take a lot of rehearsing before they actually started recording?
Weirdest thing I've ever done, because we got the songs together and it seemed like Steve and Yannick, and they would go, we'll do this. Okay, yeah, that's ready. I said, well, we've only recorded it on the dictaphone. Aren't we going to do any demos? Oh, no, we're not doing any demos. We'll just go in and, we'll get everybody else to learn the arrangements, and we'll just record it. And so we were in the studio. We rehearsed up the first song. Okay, yeah, and a bit of drumming here. What do you think goes there? La-di-da-di-da. And I don't think we'd even got through it once without messing it up. And they all just said, okay, shall we go for a take then? And I was saying, well, don't you think we should get through to the end without stopping? Oh, no, just get the tape rolling.
And you wouldn't necessarily think that when you hear this album, because it sounds so clean and so rehearsed and everything, right? Anyway, we move on to the second track. We're getting to something a little bit more straightforward. This was the second single from the album, a track called Lord of the Flies. And I think we can safely say that, too, is based on literature. Great cover art there by Hugh Syme. As Jake said, we'll talk about him a bit later on. But first, Jake, your thoughts on Lord of the Flies.
So I had to read Lord of the Flies in, I would have been a freshman in high school, and they made us read that. And then I can't remember if they made us or if I chose to watch that. But then I bought this when I was 16, so it was the summer of my sophomore year. So it was just a year after reading and watching Lord of the Flies, the black and white. I don't know if they've remade it or not. I've only ever seen the black and white movie.
Yeah,
and
they have.
They have remade it. Okay. And I remember putting this on and listening to it for the first time. And I was like, oh, this is about that morbid book that I had to. This is about that morbid book Steve Smith made me read. I love the opening riff. That it's after the epic that is the Sign of the Cross. This song's very condensed and straightforward, and I feel like it's the right choice to have a song this simplified follow. It doesn't have a lot of ups and downs. The lyrics aren't as hard to follow. But I think it works really, really great. The rhythm section, there's a lot of, between the drums and the bass, there's a lot of, I call it pushing and pulling, where the drums and the bass is clanking down, and they get this like machine. And Nico and Steve are such a perfect rhythm section. They get this machine-like piston going. And I love that so much. Those guys work like they're one unit. They are like one mind, and you hear it so well in this song. And of course, I think also Blaze delivers on this song again. I remember buying these. I bought my this and Virtual 11 as a set on eBay, and I don't remember what I paid. I know it was next to nothing. No one wanted these albums at the time. And of course, I was a Ripper fan. I don't know if you guys saw me on Johnny Metal's channel talking about Tim Ripper Owens. And so I went in with a very open mind, and lyrically, this album is darker than a lot. It's a very, especially the tail end of it. But I remember the second song just, of course, following the first one just floored me. And it still floors me how good it is. It's straightforward, but compared to the two previous albums that I'm always underwhelmed by those two albums. I don't think they're bad albums, but they almost commit a worse crime. There's just so much I don't remember about them. I put them on, and they're just background noise, most of it, to me. And if you like them, so I appreciate that. I love that you people love those albums, because I think the worst thing someone can say is, I hate this, and it's not for. I hope someone loves every music. I don't think any music should ever be unlistened to. But that's not for me. And so to put this on when I go through the Maiden discography, it's such a breath of fresh air. And Lord of the Flies is, I feel like it's straightforward Maiden, but it's done right.
Yeah, sure. Straightforward Maiden. That's a good way of putting it. I agree with everything you said, as usual. I will add that we're now seeing a new team up of writers. This is Steve Harris, Yannick Gers, and we're going to see a lot of Yannick on this album. I love the riff. I love the drums and the cymbals that, and I think this song, once it hits its groove, it has a great groove, which you don't always associate with Iron Maiden. We associate gallops with Iron Maiden.
Mm-hmm.
Even Sign of the Cross had like a slower march-like gallop, and it was dun 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 dun. It was a slower gallop, but this is a groove compared to that. So a different kind of sound, and I think it works really well. I don't really think I have anything to add about Lord of the Flies. I just think that some of these songs would have been hits, in a prior time, and Lord of the Flies very well could have been. So over to you, Harrison.
Man, really, really good song. Blazer's voice has lots of character, and he really brings the darkness. I'm not going to pit Blaze and Bruce against each other, but for this one time where I'm going to say, when Bruce performed this song on the Dance of Death tour, yeah, he sounded great on the chorus, reaching for the sky, but he sounded bored on the verses. But with Blaze, you're hanging on to every word.
Yeah, Bruce did sing this quite a bit different on the chorus, but of course we'll talk about that when we get to that album. Before we move on to the first single, Man on the Edge, I'm going to play the last track that we have from Blaze talking about, recording this album in the studio. So let's listen to that, and then we'll take it to Jake with Man on the Edge.
What's Steve like to work for as a producer? Is he sort of a whip cracker, or does he sort of like just let everyone get on with it?
He's good and bad. It's it's like a tragedy comic love affair when Steve is producing and you're doing your part, because he will encourage you and he'll go, oh, that sounded good, but he will also, when he feels like it, or if he thinks the performance is there to come, he will make you do the same thing so many times until you forgot what it's about, but in essence, I'd say as a producer he's really good, because he never forgets what the song is about. He never looks at things from a purely technical thing, and he always makes you feel like the musician is more important than the equipment.
And Man on the Edge is a song that I have, I think, 4 singles of. Here is a Digipack single with The Edge of Darkness, Justice of the Peace, and Blaze Bayley Interview Part 2. Here is a Jewel Case single with The Edge of Darkness, Justice of the Peace, and Judgment Day. And here is another single with Man on the Edge, The Edge of Darkness, Judgment Day, and Blaze Bayley Interview Part 1. Are you confused yet? And then we have the 12-inch single with The Edge of Darkness and I Live My Way. Now, of course, we'll talk about all of these songs later on, but I just wanted to show off all of these singles. As we
Not
talked
only
about
was
Man on the
this
Edge.
the first single, but it was also preceded the album's release. So it was the
Yes.
first that you would hear of New Maiden. And
That's
someone in
correct.
Kerrang only gave it 2 Ks, wasn't very impressed.
And lastly, this Man on the Edge single came with this box to hold all of the goodies, but they don't quite all hold in correctly. I don't know what they had planned, because there's no way that they planned for you to fill this thing with 3 Man on the Edge singles. So I don't know what the actual plan was, but they never ever fulfilled it. The last thing in this box set are these really cool postcards. We got Blaze, Yannick, Dave, Nico, and Steve. All right, so I know I'm being a bit long-winded here, but I'm finding that this album has a couple of different themes on them. One of them being mental health, and Man on the Edge is based on the excellent Michael Douglas film Falling Down, which I highly recommend everybody here sees. Jake, Falling Down, Man on the Edge. You have the floor.
Falling Down. I also recommend everyone see that. I work in healthcare, and there's a couple movies I always tell everyone I feel like they should watch working in that field. That's one of them. I feel like it's a very pivotal movie for people that work in that field to kind of understand what someone might be going through. This song is a little bit kind of course, that feeling of helplessness, that feeling of the weight of the world crushing down on us, of endless despair. When I first, of course, I didn't know this was based on the movie when I first heard this, but my parents had gotten divorced, and of course, that's a pretty traumatic time for any kid. And so I was dealing with a lot of the same feelings in this song, and it was a song that really I related to lyrically. And then, of course, I found out it was about that movie, and went and watched the movie. But it's got this fast and frantic tempo that I feel like ties in well with the theme of the song. And the bass tone, I really, really love Steve's bass on here. I know it's said all the time that he's such a great bass player, but he is phenomenal. And the way he phrases his bass lines, and he will, as the song goes on, he will add an extra line here and an extra line there to build tension. Frankie Bello of Anthrax does that a lot, and Eddie Jackson sometimes does that from Queensryche, and it creates an atmosphere and a sense of urgency. Or even when you take it away, a line away, it adds so much, and I love it when Steve.
The rhythm section on this album gives you a lot to chew on, perhaps more so than any other Iron Maiden album.
Yes, and I'm a bass guy, and this album's just a gem. I love it.
We'll have more to say about the bass on this album as we go through. I will say that Nico's drum sound on this album, it could be the best in the entire Maiden catalog, his drum sound. It's magnificent. It gets even better as we go through the album. I find the lyrics to this one a little on the clunky side, because, they're interpreting the movie, certain scenes quite literally. A briefcase, a lunch, and a man on the edge. I've never liked that line. Literally, he's got a briefcase with his lunch in it, and that's an actual part of the story. I also don't understand the line where he's in his car and baking is wild.
They honestly could have just changed that to making him wild, and no, it would have been fine.
Like, he literally is baking in this car in Los Angeles during a heat wave, while he's on a highway under construction, and the car's not moving, and there's like a fly buzzing around his head, and this is like the moment that he snaps and he loses it. So it's an important scene in the movie, but I think lyrically they were like searching for words to finish lines sometimes, and sacrificing poetry to just get the song moving along, get the next line out of the way. Anyway, I have nothing else to say about this song. I don't necessarily feel, I prefer Lord of the Flies as a single, but you needed something like this, like that old school Maiden, that, you know, be quick or be dead kind of vibe, for the lead single, I think, because things were about to change basically from the next track onwards. But over to you, Harrison.
All right, Man on the Edge. I love this song. This song and its chorus is what hooked me on Maiden. I was listening to Best of the Beast. It was song 3, and it was like, man, this shit is good when that first chorus came in. It's energetic and up-tempo right off the bat, which is rare for this album, as we'll get into as we go on. Great solo. I cannot fault any of the solos on this album. They're all brilliant. And a bit of funny thing. So if you're familiar with the book slash film A Man Called Ove, I was like, well, the lyrics kind of work for this too. So when I was younger, I sort of like redid the lyrics to work for A Man Called Ove. Like it was like a street cat, a Saab, and a man called Ove. And like once he built houses, a nation's residence. And it was surprising how well it translated across to that film.
Oh, you reminded me of another line that I hate. He once built weapons for nation's defense, but now he can't even give birthday presents. I hate that line. And that's the climax to the movie. He's trying to give this birthday present to his daughter, but what you don't find out until like partway through the movie is they have a restraining order against him because he's extremely violent. Anyway, moving
Despite
on.
the lyrics, Blaze delivers them all with conviction. His performance is not lacking, so...
I've said enough. We will criticize Maiden lyrics when it's appropriate, and in this case, I feel it's appropriate. But things turn around on the next track. We have. Oh, by the way, that was a Blaze, Bayley, and Gers co-write. So the first instance of that combination. This next one's a Harris solo write. It's War song number 1, Mental Health song number 2, bass intro number 1. Go ahead, Jake.
Fortunes of what a stupid ass song. No, this has a great bass intro. I mean, I don't care how many times I hear this bass intro, I get giddy. I turn into like a little kid, and I'm like,
May I?
Yeah. Yeah, I get giddy just like that. I mean, and I can be driving down the street, you know, and I'm like, okay, time to go, no hands. I absolutely love it. But lyric content, I always think of Lord of the Rings. War will make corpses of us all. Kind of about how war is a regretful thing. Is it kind of worth it? I feel like there's a little bit of that going on in some of these war songs here, where Steve questions, and it pops up in another song later. He questions kind of the benefit of war, I feel like. But there's this feeling of helplessness throughout this whole song that just musically, lyrically, it just has this doomy quality to it. And I can see why some people would be very put off by this Iron Maiden album, because from here on out, a lot of this album is very dark and tragic and full of despair. And if you want that, and Blaze's voice very much can add to that feeling of despair. And if you want Maiden where it's, oh, you know, it uplifts you, you're kind of going in the gutters here with this album and the themes. I can see why a lot of people threw this out, because they wanted something to pick them up and not something that was going to make them go, the world's the pits, man.
Well, we might get into this a bit later. Mike himself was in the pits, and this album actually ended up being a sort of comfort for him. Well, comfort's probably not the best word. It's probably best if Mike talks about this bit, but the X Factor means a lot to him.
Same.
Yeah, we can talk about that maybe when we get to Look for the Truth. But I agree with everything Jake said about Fortunes of War. I think Steve's digging a little deeper as far as his lyrics go on this album, like even the war stuff. You know, he's talking about post-traumatic stress disorder. He's talking about a lot of different current events And that was a direction Harrison and I talked about in the Fear of the Dark episode, where we're going further into current events. And this album covers that even while doing war stuff. I think this is a magnificent, it's almost a ballad to start with. And then we get to heavier parts. And of course, there's a blitz at the end. But, maybe Harrison has an opinion on this, but I feel that the guitar part, that I feel that the live versions are even better as far as that guitar part goes. Like, it's just got more life to it. But that might be a thought for another time. This is a great song. I think that I do recall that when they were showcasing this album to the press, they were only playing the first 3 songs, and then they left the rest to be when the album was released. And some of the press that were negative against the albums said, well, I understand why tracks 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11 weren't heard before, because these are all the slow, mopey, depressing songs. We don't necessarily agree with that, but that was the impression at the time in some of the negative press. I choose to look at this song as something, again, we're going into different directions here, and that's what you want when a band puts out a new album, and especially when you've got new members. Blaze has that kind of voice. Let's take advantage of it, and let's write some of these serious songs. It was a serious time. It was a more serious time than, some of the previous albums were birthed out of. Anyway, that's all I have to say about it.
Well, what Jake said about never getting tired of that bass intro, that's something that's sort of emblematic of the whole album. The whole album has this real less is more approach to, even though there's long songs, it never really overdoes anything. You never feel it dragging, in the sense that you're never like overloaded with the same thing. So you'll never, if you like the X Factor, you will never get sick of hearing it, because it never spoils you with too much. Whereas, say, for example, like, how many times can you listen to Run to the Hills, Run to the Hills over and over before you get sick of it? Like, you'll never really get sick of, people say, don't worry, say that time's a perfect healer, that the nightmares, they will come to pass. And, Blaze's voice is, we are transitioning now into the X Factor experience, which is dark, moody, atmospheric, slow burn songs. And that is where Blaze's voice is perfect for it. I really love this song, especially when it heavies up and speeds up with the solo as well. This song, that we're getting ahead of ourselves, this song also makes a great 8-bit version, but we're not going to touch on that for a few more years. In series, yes, not real life, yes.
I may have misspoken earlier. I may have said that this was a Bayley Gers Harris co-write. That's not right. It's a Harris. It's the next song that's a Bayley Gers Harris co-write. But I did point out a few lyrics here that I forgot to mention. Unfortunes of war. I'm scarred for life, but it's not my flesh that's wounded. Some great stuff on this album. Like, don't overlook this stuff. But let's go to Look for the Truth. Mental health, once again, insomnia, bad dreams, they seem to recur as this album goes on. This is the Bayley Gers Harris co-write that I mentioned earlier. So your thoughts, Jake, on Look for the Truth?
Oh, Look for the Truth. It's got this slow, sad intro. Like, music can move you and make you feel things. And this intro always makes me feel sad, empty. Again, I always remember it takes me back to 2006, where I was at the time. Not only had my parents gotten divorced, my brother was being shipped off to Afghanistan. So there was a lot of sadness and emptiness inside of me. I wasn't sleeping well. So this song, again, also resonated with me. Blaze shines on this. He really gives it his all, I feel like. Somehow, as dark as this is, there's a little bit of hope in his voice when he just, here is the dream. He has this hopeful quality to his voice. It just, there's never excessive flash or flare like the solos. that was something indicative of the 80s. There was a lot of flash and flare and excessive showing off. And I'm not trying to criticize or say that's a bad thing, because I love a lot of those 80s bands and songs, and I that's what I want at a certain point in time. But that would not fit here. That would be inappropriate on this song. It's the guitars are very subdued. They're very pulled back and restrained, I think would be a great way to put it. And I feel like that was appropriate for what this song was trying to accomplish. If you would have had them vomiting riffs and screaming solos and leads and dive bombs on here, I feel like it would have just destroyed what they were trying to accomplish with this song.
You know, as far as guitar solos on this album go, I think for both Davey and Yannick, we're seeing high points in their playing, especially in Sign of the Cross, which you alluded to earlier on. My thoughts on this song. I love that beautiful ballady beginning. It's softer than Wasting Love was. It might be the softest thing that they've done since Strange World. I'm not sure. But then Nico's drums just slam in, and this is when you can really hear how well recorded his drums are. My favorite line in this song: "It's my final stand. I make a fist out of each hand. To shadows of the past, take a breath, and I scream attack." I love that. Like, if that's not one of those uplifting Blaze Bayley moments, I don't know what is. Yeah, as Harrison said, I was going through some rough times at this time in 1995. I had a funny... I bought the album, and I was telling my girlfriend at the time that I just bought the new Iron Maiden album, and she goes, "Iron Maiden? Why would you buy that? They'll never be big again."
Yeah, I was actually going to bring that up later during my final thoughts. The quote was something along the lines, "Why are you listening to new Iron Maiden? You know they'll never be popular again."
Yeah,
which
as if that was why I was listening to this music. She didn't get it. She didn't understand. I put in my notes, this might be the most important lyric that they've ever written, because this isn't a song about the Rime of the Ancient Mariner. This isn't a song about the Quitsats, Hatterack. This is a song about you and me. This is a song about us. Ordinary, everyday, go to work, do your job, come home people. And Maiden usually don't write songs about you and me. They write songs about more interesting characters than you and me, usually. So this is really one of the first times that Maiden have ever just written about us. And I think for that reason, it's one of their most important songs, period. Back in the days of cassette, we would have flipped the album over. This would have been the side closer. Harrison, any thoughts on that? Any thoughts on Look for the Truth?
This is one of my favorite songs on the album. It's an epic song with a really powerful riff when it gets going. This song, as good as it is on the album, was 10 times better when Blaze did it live on Alive in Poland. Not only was it more powerful, more aggressive, but that whoa, whoa, whoa bit works so much better live. What a song.
Well said. All right, so we flip the record over and we get to the next war song, The Aftermath. This is a Harris Bayley Gers track, 6 minutes, 20 seconds. Begins softly on side 2. Jake, what do you think about The Aftermath?
I should probably get the ugly out of the way about this song. Remember how I was talking about excess and guitar solos and whatnot? I think the solo on here is completely inappropriate. It's excessive. It's show offy. It's bloated. I don't like it. I think it destroys what this song is going for. It's a song about, again, war and how it destroys man's souls. And again, like Blaze, where is it? Let's see here. In the mud and the rain, what are we fighting for? Is it worth the pain? Is it worth dying for? Who will take the blame? Why did they make a war? Question that come again. Should we be fighting at all? It's a very deep song, and this solo isn't sad. It's not sorrowful. It doesn't have any pain in it. It's excessive shredding.
The song actually speeds up at that point.
It does, but I'm
saying like it speeds up to match the solo rather than remaining at its slower intensity.
I feel like that's just
Yeah.
I hate it. I think that whole bit there is inappropriate. I feel like it should have stayed. They could have done something that fit the song, and I feel like they sped it up for a show off case to
Yeah.
showcase
I
the
was
talent.
that's what I was sort of trying. I was trying to
Yeah.
bring it up as like supporting evidence. Look, they even sped the song up for the
Yeah.
solo thing, but
Mhm.
whereas maybe they shouldn't have.
Yeah. And I don't, if someone likes that, again, awesome. I'm glad you appreciate that. That's just my opinion. My opinion doesn't matter. That's just what I think. I'm just some jerk off from South Dakota. Um, but otherwise, I absolutely love this song. Like I said, my brother was in Afghanistan, and I got to hear a lot of these thoughts from him over the years. And so over the years, this is something that I questioned, of course, what we were doing over there at the time. I think a lot of people did. What was it really worth fighting for? Are we really protecting our freedoms? Are we subduing a people of a foreign land for their resources, to rape, pillage, and plunder their resources and take what is theirs under the these were questions I was asking myself of current events in 2006 when I discovered this album. And so it's always been a very kind of personal song to me. I feel like it was something that really touched me. The bass and drums on here are amazing. I say that a lot. But Blaze, he gives it his all. Like, he shines on this album. And this is one of those instances when people are like, "Oh, Blaze was such a crappy singer." And when I went and saw Maiden, you'd run to these fans. "I've seen Maiden every single time they've been on tour, blah. Oh, did you see him with Blaze?" "Nah, Blaze wasn't Iron Maiden. Bruce is." And it's like, yeah, he's not Bruce Dickinson, but he was with Iron Maiden. Iron Maiden is not the singer. And Blaze could belt it out on this song. This is a phenomenal song. I feel like it's, again, just that he gets up there and he really, that he doesn't get that operatic Jeff Tate. Oh, but he gets that deep guttural going, and it's a showcase of his talents in a very appropriate manner.
Yep. Can't argue with any of that. I think you've said anything that I could have said much better than I could. The only thing that I'm going to say is, if we were to rank all 11 songs in this album, which we're not going to do, but if we were, you have to pick one to go first and you have to pick one to go last, and this would be my last. That's all I really need to add. But that doesn't mean that I don't like the song. It just means that out of the 11, that's where it ranks. How about you, Harrison?
The Aftermath is not one of my favorites either, but it's still good. It's simply edged out by most of the other album. It is sort of stylistic and lyrical retreading. I actually think the sped up solo and ending part is a highlight of the song, but that's because it's not one of my favorites, as opposed to something that means more to me. But yeah, it is still a good song.
And you like fast parts anyway. We both do. After that, we get into sort of a dark song lyrically, but an uplifting song musically. The Harris solo written Judgment of Heaven. And you know what? Maybe I should just mention this because we haven't yet. But Steve Harris, obviously, he wrote a lot of these lyrics. He had been through a divorce, or was going through a divorce, and his father had just died. So Steve Harris was dealing with all of this stuff, and it was coming out in the music and the lyrics, most definitely. And you sometimes wonder how close these lyrics are to his real life experience. I don't know. But Judgment of Heaven, really good song to take that thought forward. Jake.
We get another bass intro. God, I really hate these bass intros. What kind of fool sits there and wants a bass intro all the time? Man, can we get more guitars? It's all about the guitar. And I love this thing.
I want a cowbell intro.
Yeah. That's what we need. More cowbell.
Boy, that would sure fit the mood of this album perfectly.
Synth intro.
Boop,
But-
boop, 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 boop. That was a terrible attempt at jump, but
I gathered it was Jump. This feels like an existential crisis on the verge of suicide. Maybe with slightly questioning your life a little bit and all of your choices. I feel like it was appropriate for you to mention what Steve was going through, because I was going to ask, wasn't his father had just passed away when we got to this song? Because this one really, someone's going through some terribly tough times when they wrote this song, and you look at these lyrics and it is heavy stuff, but there's a bit of an upbeat feel with how Blaze delivers. Yeah. Which kind of puts this weird juxtaposition on what's being said versus how it's said, so to speak. But this song, it's really deep, and I feel like lyrical content has me paying more attention to the message than the music on this one. But that's just me. I love it. Musically, I don't think there's much going on that shines to me musically. The lyrics are like here, that bass intro is here, but then the rest of it kind of just, and I'm not saying it's bad, but the rest of it is here. And I really like the lyrics and that bass intro, but the rest of it is down here for me.
See, that's interesting, because I'm kind of the opposite. I feel that the music, there's some really good stuff going on here, especially the beat, that Nico's drums on this thing, incredible, and the chorus, that all of my life I have believed, and that's what you need. This is a very dark song, as you mentioned. There's a line in there, it's hard to remember when I was happy. I felt like suicide a dozen times or more. Or is it 100 times or more? I can't remember the exact lyrics. A dozen times or more. But that's the easy way. That's the selfish way. The hardest part is to get on with your life. And then he talks about other struggles. He keeps struggling, clutching at straws to find a way. But I think when you get to that chorus, the chorus is the point. Only God can judge you at the end of the day. Just pick up, find the strength, and get on with your life. It's not that simple, of course, but it's a 5-minute song, so you have to make it simple. Again, it's a personal favorite. I think it's it's an important song, and I would call it an anti-suicide song personally. And and I think this song kind of exemplifies where Maiden were at this stage of the game in 1995. Harrison.
Similarly to the Aftermath, this is not one of my favorites on the albums, but it gets better and better for me as it goes on, particularly that that guitar part is probably, I think, the highlight of the song for me. I think the intro is really ropey, though. That upbeat musical feel with the really dark lyrics is a really bad mismatch for me. And just casually throwing out, I thought about suicide a dozen times or more. It just doesn't sit right with me. Like, suicide's a really serious thing. To just like casually throw it, I thought about it a dozen times or more in this upbeat intro, just really like rubs the whole thing the wrong way for me. But from the 1:30 mark, I'm fully on board. That's where it picks up as a song for me.
Okay, so things are really serious from here on. Blood on the World's Hands, another Harris Wright. We have possibly, we call it war song number 3 in this album. But it's a lot more than just that. So, Jake, this is a big one to take a bite out of. What do you have to say?
How do I say this without upsetting people with the current climate of things? This song used to kind of be like, it was good, it wasn't great. Re-listening to this album lately, I feel ill. I feel repulsed. I feel revolted. I feel current events really relate to this song. I feel like this song's resonating more today with me than it has ever. I would have probably ranked this song, maybe middle of the pack towards the bottom of the pack, but it's very much hitting me lately. The bass in here is amazing. There's so much tension that Steve creates in this song. And it has that bass intro, which is very dark and gloomy. Again, I think this might be the best bass intro on the album. It has that, I think there's some guitar swells too that might be going on with the 6 strings in the beginning that really, really, really create this sort of tension and darkness. And again, I feel like that knowing what's coming lyrically also makes me feel a little queasy. I love this song now. The solo on here is more sad. The guitars play off of each other and cry to each other. And here, I feel like the solo on here is more what should have been on the Aftermath, maybe something a little bit more artsy that played with the tone and content of the song. This song really hit all the right notes lately. It did what music should do. It makes you feel something. I would probably put this one real close to the top today if you were asking me to rank them. And again, Blaze I think he runs the gambit on here of what Blaze can do as a singer, where he goes up and down and up and down, and you get not just the highs and lows, but this mid-range that if you want to know what Blaze can do, this is a good place to start. Don't just listen to Lord of the Flies. Go check this one out, I think.
Okay. I don't know if you caught me doing the side eye when he was talking about the bass.
Talking about the bass solo?
Yeah.
I did catch that.
Okay, so I'm going to read my notes here. Worst bass intro of all time. It's almost a bass solo more than a bass intro. It has nothing to do with the song, and at times sounds as bad as I do playing bass. I'm talking about that part where it goes do 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 do. I mean, it sounds like something that I'm not gonna harp on this because I don't want to offend Jake, but
No, go for it, Mike. You're not going to offend me. I love differences of opinion. We all hear things differently.
Harrison knows I hate that bass intro. I absolutely hate it, and I can't believe it even made the cut on an album this long. But it's interesting because I had 2 different thoughts about this song in the course of a day, which is I had a problem with the ending where they're ranting about all these issues from, social issues to geopolitical issues. And then at the very end, someone should do something. And I thought to myself, well, that's kind of useless. And I thought to myself also, maybe that's the point. Someone should, but someone won't. And I wonder if that was what the message is, what's abruptly cut off. Someone should. I wonder if that's the point. What the hell can you do? But I don't want to bring this episode down too far, even though we've still got a ways to go. We've still got 2 a.m. and the Unbeliever to go. Anyway, Harrison, your thoughts on Blood on the World's Hands?
Right, so I have always loved this song. I've loved its aggressive and powerful. Blaze is right at home, right up front, bringing 100% of what makes him great. And I love the bass solo. I love the fact that we get a bass solo from Steve Harris. Steve, I don't like bass solos, Harris. I find the first bit of it just a bit too whimsical for the album's tone. It's a bit all beep, 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 beep. But from after that bit, it's like the that bit's great. And there's a great transitions from the bass solo straight into the of the riff starting.
I'm just glad that you backed him up on that because I didn't want to. Anyway, let's move on. The Edge of Darkness. So now we have War Song number 4, Apocalypse Now, Heart of Darkness. And second film featuring Robert Duvall, because Falling Down features Robert Duvall. So we have 2 Robert Duvall songs on the X Factor. This is a Harris Bayley Gers co-write, 6 minutes 39 seconds. Jake, your thoughts on the Heart of Darkness?
I still feel ill from that last song when I went through and was listening to this, and you get this bass solo, and okay, I'm sitting there, and I've been listening. Not that I don't want to say like I needed a refresher, but this is how I always run these when I go on. I listen to it leading up to it and whatnot, and like I said, I discover something new. I was still feeling really ill after Blood on the World's Hands, and you get this bass solo here. Bass intro. I feel really like I just feel like a bowel movement, man. Going into this song. I don't feel good. And then you get another war song. Again, war will make corpses of us all. Some of these lyrics again, you're just let's see here. We are on Edge of Darkness, huh? Let's see here. I've looked into the heart of darkness where the blood red journey ends. That's our first lines. Man, we are really getting in there dark, guys. Someone might need a Zoloft. Whoever wrote this was definitely in need of an antidepressant. And so maybe this was definitely maybe their therapy, but God, I hope they saw a therapist because, and I didn't think that in 2006 when I was 16 years old, but now almost 36 years old, I'm like, oh boy, buddy, someone's got some issues, and I'm thinking it right now. But again, this is another one where Blaze belts it out, and the way he belts it out is a juxtaposition of the content is so dark, it's down here and gloomy, but Baze has that baritone, and he's kind of up here with it, and it's kind of, I want to say jovial, but it's kind of, you kind of, when you're driving around, you kind of want to belt it out with them, and so it's kind of a pick-me-up as the song progresses. And the other nice thing about this is the bass in here is really good. I'm like, I find myself it's got that, it's dark, but as it progresses, it's got this pick-me-up quality, and I don't feel like a bowel movement by the end of this song.
Mission accomplished, Steve Harris. He didn't have a bowel movement.
I don't feel terrible. I love this song. But yeah, I don't know. I hope you guys love it, but if you don't, you don't. You're missing out, maybe. Maybe I'm missing out because I hate the previous 2 albums.
No, I like this song. I really think Nico's drums are very musical. His drums and cymbals are very musical. That a lot of the really dramatic cymbal crashes. You're always going to get complaints when you reduce something like Apocalypse Now or The Heart of Darkness to how long is this song?
6 minutes of music,
39 seconds,
6.5 minutes,
right?
With
you've
helicopter
got
noise bookending.
You've got right, exactly. So you've even got that time wasted, but you've got all these different issues that are in the film, like colonialism and all this other stuff, and the complexity of the character of Colonel Kurtz, and we're reduced to a song. But I think in this case, Maiden have really distilled some of the key moments of the film down into this song, into a magnificent performance by Blaze Bayley. There's some really strong lines that his performance in this song, like, is as good as the movie, if not better. But I'm thinking of what I wanted was a mission, and for my sins they gave me one. That's absolutely so powerful when you hear him sing that, and with Nico in the background, and now I understand why the genius must die. Oh. Blaze, man, like he was killing it. killing it all over this song. So that's all I have to say about The Heart of Darkness. Over to you, Harrison.
This is my favorite song on the album. It is probably my favorite song of the Blaze Bayley era. It is like Infinite Dreams from Seventh Son of a Seventh Son in that it is just constantly building in intensity and tempo. And just like Bruce is able to match it on that album, Blaze is matching it on this album. It's 6 minutes of music with the helicopter bookends, giving it an extra 30 seconds, but it is over in a flash because, as I talked about earlier, the X Factor's less is more approach. You're rocking out to this great, every minute I get weaker, while in the jungle they go strong, and you're rocking out to that, and then suddenly it's changed up to, it goes whoa, whoa, whoa before a minute, and then from then it's like, and here I stand with a knife in my hand. It's each moment is enough to really satisfy you, but it never overdoes it. Like, you'll never get sick of listening to The Edge of Darkness if you like it, because 6 minutes, but it's over in a flash, and half the time I hit back and I listen to it again, because I love it that much. And this song was an absolute monster when Blaze did it live. Heavier, crunchier, and more powerful than ever.
Not to mention, it's shorter than the movie, no matter how long the song may be.
There's
Anyway.
no director's cut of The Edge of Darkness.
There's no Edge of Darkness Redux. Anyway, the trio of Bayley, Gers, and Harris returns. Now, I will point out, though, that the names are in different orders on different tracks, probably depending on who was the primary songwriter. This one is a Bayley, Gers, Harris, meaning Blaze was the primary songwriter on 2 a.m. This is a very different song for Iron Maiden. It's a mental health song. It's another insomnia song. Let's talk about it. Jake, go ahead. 2 a.m.
Do you guys ever work a 2 to 10 shift or something that you get off work, maybe a graveyard shift? I work a lot of those. I work mostly actually overnights, but I remember in my early 20s, I was working what was supposed to be 2 to 10s, and they turned into 2 to midnights. And then I was in my early 20s. So what does a young man in his early 20s do? He goes to the bar after work and he drinks, especially when I lived in a very small town. You could walk home from work. And then you'd get home, and I get home from work at 2 a.m. and sit down with a beer. I would grab another. This was very much my life at one point. Turn on the TV late at night. Yeah, I didn't have cable, but I had Netflix. I would find something on Netflix and then wonder why I am here. Yeah, every young guy, I think, lives in a shithole at one point in time in their life. And it's meaningless and trivial, and it washes over me. And once again, I wonder, is this all there is for me? Oh my God, this was my life in my early 20s. I was really wondering, was that all there really was for me? Life seems so pathetic. I wish I could leave it all behind. Oh my God, you're questioning your existence. I really, these lyrics again hit the spot. And I don't want to slander what people call peak Iron Maiden of the 80s, but they are really digging down into some deep content on this one. And I feel like some of these lyrics just outshine what we would call the cream of the crop, the peak Iron Maiden, what Maiden's known for. I feel like these lyrics really, they have a little bit more substance to them and a little bit more importance to what than Run to the Hills maybe. Or
it's funny you should mention, if I may briefly interrupt for attention, it's funny you should mention the concept of peak Iron Maiden, because as I was doing my research for this show, I was using, Mike and I have an acquaintance by the name of Jay, and he provided scans from all these Iron Maiden like metal magazines of Iron Maiden articles and all that from across the year. And I was looking in the year 1995 for this. And there's one, this is in Kerrang, and they're talking about the Iron Maiden reissues, the 1995 reissues of all their back catalogue. And there's a line here. The question is, How does Iron Maiden's back catalogue stand up after all these years? Actually, exactly as you'd expect. The first three albums still remain their best, while latter records show sign of strain and wear, the preponderance of overblown epic material totally weighing down and diluting the band's crucial power. Exactly why main man Steve Harris was so convinced that subject matter such as Alexander the Great and the Ancient Mariner would be of interest to the average Maiden fan is still a matter for, and then it carries over to the next page. So it seems that even back in the day, the idea of peak Maiden was a hotly debated topic.
That was pretty much it, I think. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
the lyrics are just phenomenal on this one.
Okay.
And I feel the only other thing I had to add is I feel like it's not every day Iron Maiden writes a song that is so encapsulating of everyday life.
Yeah, like I said, there's songs about you and me on this album, and that's a first, really. But that's it. We're heading into the final track, the 8-minute 5-second closing
Uh,
deep cut.
oh wait, you and I haven't talked about 2 a.m.
Oh, I thought you did.
No, I was talking about something completely tangentially unrelated that you could edit out and make a use
Okay,
of. But,
I wasn't gonna add anything because Jacob.
yeah, I'm just
Jacob said everything.
gonna quickly say then 2 a.m. It's not bad, but I just think it's probably the weakest song on the album for me. The solo cannot be faulted, much like the rest of the album. The solo is top notch, but the rest of the song, I think, like Mike said earlier, something has to be last, and for me, it's 2 a.m.
Okay, fair enough. Well, there really is something last, and that's the 8-minute 5-second closing deep cut. Harris Gers wrote "The Unbeliever." Very different song. Jake, your thoughts on "The Unbeliever"?
Oh boy. You know how I said that modern Iron Maiden was born on Sign of the Cross? This one also has that. I feel like Brave New World's sound was also born very much on this one too. It has that there's that machine push and pull where Nico's pushing down on the drums as Steve's in between. They're hitting those bass lines in between, and they're just firing like this in unison, but almost staggered a little bit, so there's never any blank space there on this one. And I absolutely love the rhythm section on here. I think this outshines almost anything Maiden might have done in their prime. I really love this song. It's a big deep cut, and I know it's terrible to say, but I really I would I would throw out the Trooper. I would throw out Run to the Hills. I would throw out Flight of the Icarus. I would throw out all of those classics in that are stuck, Fear of the Dark, that are stuck in the set list just for The Unbeliever. And if that meant that we sacrificed, 15, 20 minutes of the show for 1/8, I would be A-okay with this. This is an awesome song. You're questioning thyself here. You're questioning your faith. You're questioning your, and I'm going to say something that's probably going to offend some people. You're kind of questioning your religious indoctrination in this song, I feel like. And things are being shaken, and maybe not everyone has gone through a moment where they've had these questions and whatnot, but I know, especially at 2006, when I first heard this album, I was questioning a lot of this. And Blaze is a powerhouse on here. The bridge is fantastic. It's got this building tension before the stellar solos. And again, these solos on here, they really cry and weep, and they're long, but it's not out of place, and it builds the tension before the song closes to that epic. And I know this is how the proper album closes. And I have a whole second disc with 3 tracks that to me has always closed the album in my mind. But this is a phenomenal closer. I think if you made me put a list together of my top 10 favorite album closers, this would definitely make that top 10 list, and it probably would be near the top. It's perfect. It's chef's kiss.
I love that. I've done that on a few of the Maiden episodes. Chef's kiss. The only thing I want to add to what you said is to complete the thought there, questioning religious indoctrination. That's where the album started, with Sign of the Cross. So there you go, bookends. This is one of my favorite Maiden closers too. To me, it's all about the music. It's so rhythmically challenging. It's very progressive for this album. So you have that and then, you know, it's all over the place. And Nico's a superstar in this one. The whole band is. I'm sure this is one of those songs that is a bugger to play. I'm sure playing it live would have been near impossible. I think this is just a super song. It has sort of like the slower part, that all my life I've run away, and you've got the acoustics going there, which is kind of reminiscent of Killers when they were doing that experimentation on Killers and some of those more experimental tracks. As my final thought, if you've ever wondered what is being said in the fade out, here it is.
That's the one.
Yeah, that's it. Let's go listen. That's the one.
There you go. That's the one. I love when they do stuff like that, and there's even better stuff coming when we get to Brave New World. But really, that's all I have to say about The Unbeliever. I think it's a 10 out of 10 closer, and we will talk about the bonus tracks as soon as we're done talking about The Unbeliever. So, Harrison, over to you.
Right, it is a great song, and in addition to that, it's a unique song. Even on an album this long with this many songs, they're still coming up with something unique sounding to finish it off. Those intense, overbearing vocals from Blaze Bayley on the verses are some of my favorite performances of his on this album. And particularly, while the first chorus is nothing new, sort of reminiscent of 2 a.m., I think the second chorus with the All My Life, where he's actually reaching for some slightly higher notes, I think is also really, really good sounding. And yeah, of course, that's the one. That little bit of studio chatter at the end there.
I love when they do stuff like that. All right. So, as Jake said earlier, all of these tracks were released on singles of some kind, but there are 3 bonus tracks on this beautiful, beautiful Japanese CD here.
One of which is CD exclusive to this Japanese CD.
That's right. I Live My Way.
Sorry, I was just going to say, you both have the white case for your X-Factor. In fact, my X-Factor did have the white case, but I didn't like how it looked with the rest of the album. So I switched it for a dark grey case because I think that suited the album's tone and darkness better.
Oh, you're not wrong. But I want to go through these.
Virtual 11.
Yeah, that's true. I want to go through these songs relatively quickly. I didn't make a lot of notes here, but we have 3 bonus tracks that were all B-sides. Justice of the Peace, written by Harris and Dave Murray, the only Dave Murray co-write. We have I Live My Way, Harris, Bayley, Gers, and Judgment Day, Bayley, Gers. No Steve. Real quick, I Live My Way was the rarest of them all for a long time. It was only on the Japanese CD, but most commonly on the 12-inch single for Man on the Edge. And this came with a cool poster, which we will not unfold, but you'll be able to get an idea for how gigantic this poster
Jesus
is.
Christ.
Right. So this poster is not getting unfolded on this show, but basically I'll just lump these 3 songs in together. They're a lot more fast-paced. They're more along the lines of, you know, what people expected out of Iron Maiden rather than the slower, ponsive material. They're all under they're all in the 4 to 5 minute range, basically. To two songs sort of about social justice and social issues, and then of course I Live My Way, which is sort of like the rebellious attitude kind of song. All worth tracking down though, and as Jake said, when you get all the 14 songs together in this album, with these heavier songs, these faster songs, there's a more of a balance to what you might expect on a Maiden album, and maybe a double album should have been considered. Who knows? Hindsight's always 2020, and the album was probably going to tank no matter what they did. But we'll go to Jake next. What do you think about your three closing songs?
Just as like you said, there's three songs, two social justice type of songs, and then one anthem. They're all very fast and kind of frantic-y tempo that and I go back to this not because it was the first, but because in my mind it's the first time I remember hearing something kind of fast and frantic, and it was a highly influential song on me in sound. Very reminiscent of Queensryche's The Needle Lies to me, that fast and frantic, you know. But The Needle Lies is like 2 minutes and some odd seconds. These are twice as long epics. And one of my favorite things about I Live My Way, it's kind of about, there's a bit of it where it talks about how he lives his life for others, kind of, and maybe under others people's feet, and he's taking back his life to live it his way. Lyrically, it's my favorite out of these three. I really, really like that kind of, you know, that, yeah, I live my life. That I'm still a rebel at heart, even as the older I, and I might learn to play with others a little bit better, and I might learn to be not bite my tongue sometimes a little bit more, but I still am just I live my life my way, man. Don't tell me how to do things. I love this song. And again, Blaze really shines on these, and if you want to know how fast he can sing, he rattles these lyrics out fast. I will not even, some of those songs you're like, I want to try and sing along, even though I sing like dog shit. I'm going to try. Nah, these ones, don't even try to sing some of these songs with him, because he is rattling it out rapid fire. And they're great closers. To me, these are again, I know I said it before, but that's, in my mind, that is how this album closes, is with these three songs. I pop out the first disc, I put in that second disc with those three songs, and that is how I properly close out this album. And this is probably my second or third favorite Iron Maiden album. I'm gonna be honest, guys. I love this album.
I think that much is clear. But
Yeah,
Harrison, your
Yes.
thoughts on the final three tracks?
I really, really, really love these three extra Iron Maiden tracks that didn't make the cut. Yes, if they were on the album, it would have been a much more balanced listening experience. Yes, it may have even been received slightly well better by the press, but to put these songs on the album would be to dilute the essence of what makes the X Factor, and not another Iron Maiden album. You'd be breaking that moody, atmospheric, dark slow burn a bit more. So that's how I reconcile my love of these songs with my unhappiness that they weren't on the album, by convincing myself that the album's better with them off it. I Live My Way, great song. It is the most B-sidey of the bunch to me, but I still like it. Justice of the Peace, I think it's awesome. I love that really intense, really powerful singing at the start Blaze is doing, but those softer bits are kind of, like you've committed to this really high intensity, and then you've got these softer bits that are a little meh, kind of, because they park the intensity a bit. But the solo and that whoa, 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 whoa part is awesome. And Judgment Day, easily my favorite of the three. Aggressive, up-tempo all the way throughout. Atmospheric pre-solo verse works great. I love the chorus, pre-chorus, all of it. I love everything about the Judgment Day.
Fortunately, we do have some more B-sides to discuss, because on the Lord of the Flies single, we got a couple more covers. Now, gentlemen, I will be honest with you. I'm not a big fan of My Generation. Um, I guess I don't like the song that much in the first place. It's sacrilege here, but maybe I kind of dig Gorky Park's cheesy version of My Generation. But they do a pretty authentic version of My Generation, and the cool thing about it is you can really hear Steve on the backing vocals quite clearly. What I
I
really
think it's
liked was
really cool to hear Steve on backing in the studio. You don't get that very often.
you do not get that very often, and I love that about it. Maybe that's part of like the sort of like live in the studio aspect of recording B-sides. But I really like Dr. Doctor. It's a lot more polished. It's really powerful. It's, you know, it's made for those Maiden guitar harmonies. Um, I would give Dr. Doctor like a 5 out of 5 in My Generation, like a 2 or a 3 out of 5 as far as Maiden covers go. But Jake, do you have thoughts on those two tracks?
I'm going to speak sacrilege and throw my hat in the ring with you, Mike. I'm not a huge Who fan. I love what I love, but I'm not a big fan of My Generation. It sounds dated. I think it sounds clunky. And this is the original one too. I do think Blaze gets a little bit more Paul Di'Anno-esque on the vocals on this one. He's got that punky piss and vinegar in the way he kind of spits it out, like, and he sounds like he's kind of spitting it in there. I've only listened to this once, and it was just recently. Um, Steve really shines. Of course, Entwistle was his name, right? Their bass player. Entwistle was a phenomenal bass player. And he gets some really fun bass parts in there, but I would not go out of my way to track this cover down. I wouldn't feel obligated to have this in my collection. I wouldn't feel like I'm missing anything. However, Dr. Doctor has such a fun rhythm and beat to it, and Blaze is fun on here. He sounds good. I love that it's kind of got this bouncy vibe to it. I kind of want to track this one down. Um, do I think it comes close to this whole album? No, but as far as a cover song goes, I think Dr. Doctor's fun.
I think it's awesome. But Harrison, you get to close out your thoughts.
Right. I really don't like The Who, but I think this is a pretty good cover. Blazer's voice is well suited for the song, My Generation. It's really cool to hear Steve on backing vocals in the studio, as I said, and he's got some great bass work in there as well. Like, you don't cover My Generation if you're not a good bass player, and Steve is a good bass player. Oh, Steve is a great bass player, but yes, he's a good bass player. Dr. Doctor, Blaze sounds awesome here. This is my preferred version of the song, sacrilege as it is to say. I wish this is what they played before their shows.
It's my favorite version of Dr. Doctor as well. So there you go. Some hot takes. That's the album and all the B-sides. At this point of the show, Harrison is going to take us through the X Factor and tell us about some of the songs that were played and weren't played. So over to you, Harrison, on the X Factor.
Right. So the X Factor, this was a 1 year on the road from September 1995 to September 1996, 129 shows. Now, we talked earlier about global slump in metal and hard rock sales. Not only that, but this album's poor reception generally translated into smaller venues that the band were playing, less arenas, more clubs and, halls sort of thing. This was mostly in the US and Europe. I think in South America, they were still doing pretty well. They were at Rock in Rio, not Rock in Rio, Monsters of Rock down in Brazil. But, in general, this was a bit of a step back for the veterans in the band compared to their heyday 10 years earlier. Bruce was also taking shots at them in the media as well. There was a bit of friction between him and his former bandmates, to say. And so the tour starts. Now, the thing is, mixing the album and the press for the album, that dragged on. They planned 4 weeks of rehearsals for the tour. They only got 7 days, which led Blaze often forgot lyrics on stage. And early X Factor, he wasn't as good as he would be on stage. There was generally a bit of Blaze's biggest problem on stage with Iron Maiden was his inconsistency. If you listen to the shows, you'll be like, oh, that's a great version of Number of the Beast there. You know, oh, that Hallowed sounds pretty good too, sort of thing. Oh, yeah, Fear of the Dark, great there. You know, 2 Minutes to Midnight, oh, that's a great version there. But you'll also get like, oh, God, gee, that didn't sound good, sort of thing. Oh, wow, oh, he's just scatting because he forgot the lyrics. Yeah, unfortunately, I think they needed more rehearsal time. And really, they were playing a lot of Bruce's stuff without detuning. They were played in their original key. This is above Blaze's range. Even though he could squeak out a good Number of the Beast here and there, for the most part, he was generally singing like David Coverdale, which means he was wailing above his range, unfortunately. You know, they did play 5 songs from the X Factor every night, and they played another 2, Lord of the Flies and the Edge of Darkness, more than 100 dates. But the rest was a smattering of Bruce stuff, apart from 2 Diano tracks. They played Hallowed, they played Trooper, they played Number of the Beast. You know, I think that the X Factor was a missed opportunity to play songs like Phantom of the Opera and Power Slave, because I think those songs would have really suited Blaze. I would have loved to have heard him sing Power Slave, because Bruce is singing in that baritone range. So to take a natural baritone to that song, I think would have taken it to the next level. And it wasn't all that bad. You know, you look at Afraid to Shoot Strangers, you look at Evil That Men Do, you look at Fear of the Dark, and even 2 Minutes to Midnight. Blaze was generally routinely singing these songs really well, and Diano stuff like Wrathchild, Iron Maiden, Running Free, Sanctuary, all well within his wheelhouse. You'll generally find that a lot of the criticism of Blaze on stage was exaggerated. He didn't have the stage presence of a plank of wood. That I know that was one of the famous ones. Like I was reading through the scans that Jay had sent us, and you know, there's these Metal Magazine articles from 1995 from basically reviewing the first shows of the tour, like Jerusalem and particularly the first UK date, and they were all positive. There was, I'll give you some quote. Blaze was described as great, and Bruce isn't missed tonight, word for word was said. You know, like despite, you know, the sort of retroactive, overly criticism. What's the word I'm looking for? There's this general retroactive just write-off of this tour as, you know, completely bad. That wasn't really the case. Like I feel there's generally an overreaction to the lack of Bruce. I mean, it was a tough tour. There's no doubt about that. There's the famous spitting gig in Chile. I'm not saying that Blaze was going out there and being great and nailing it every night. I'm just saying that, you know, there was probably a very vocal contingent of anti-Blaze fat people that has sort of prevailed into the modern day. But if you go back and listen, you will find some things to like there. But, you know, let's say going forward, the X Factor, it showed up a lot during the Virtual 11 tour. You know, you got Man on the Edge, you got Sign of the Cross, and you occasionally got a few of the other ones like Fortunes of War. But in general, the X Factor hasn't been seen since the Blaze era. You know, Sign of the Cross prevailed into the Bruce era. You got it in the Brave New World tour. You got it back on the Legacy of the Beast tour. That was a big thing. But, you know, Steve still stands by this album, and he says that Blaze was the right replacement at the time. He stands by Blaze, he stands by the album. And actually, I'll leave that for Virtual 11 because that would be getting ahead of itself. But like, the last thing I sort of wanted to say to round out was what Jake said earlier. You can see the beginning of the direction that they would take into the reunion era with their songwriting. It started here with, as Jake mentioned, Sign of the Cross. And, you know, I was also going to bring up Mike's thing about Mike's girlfriend saying New Maiden will never be popular again. Well, we know how that turned out. But, you know, we like to talk about the cover art now at the very end. So let's bring it up.
Well, let's. Why don't we let Blaze Bayley talk about it real quick? He doesn't mention it by name, but the guy who did the new album artwork was none other than Hugh Syme, who has done Rush album covers, Y&T album covers, and Tim Derling book covers. So why don't we hear from Blaze about Hugh Syme?
The new artwork is, like I said, it's a radical departure from what I've done in the past. Was that a conscious decision when the artwork was being thought of, or did it just sort of like move that way?
Well, it was, I think, a conscious decision in one way. Certainly, when not long after I joined the band and I was talking to Steve about what I thought about the artwork, I think we certainly thought along the same lines there, that there's no way you could really kill Eddie. I mean, after all, he's the undead. So, so you're not going to be able to kill him off. And really, I really like Eddie, and I like what he stands for, and the kind of, the antagonistic dark side of what he represents. So you can't really lose Eddie, but as well, Eddie has to do something. He has to come from somewhere else. I mean, this is a new lineup, and it's going to be like hopefully a new beginning and for Maiden. So I think that was in our minds, and then the guy that they'd had a couple of things sent in that Steve had looked at and wasn't particularly impressed with, and then he phoned up the guy who finished up doing the artwork, and when they said, "Oh, we want you to come up with some ideas for the next Maiden album," he said, "I've been waiting for this phone call for 5 years." So I thought, well, it's going to be good if he's been into the band and waiting to do it. So and it's come out really well. I think it's probably going to be quite controversial, but I don't think in all the time I've been following Maiden, I don't think they've ever shied away from controversy.
I don't think it was controversial. But let's get your...
The artwork was controversial in the sense that one of the scans that Jay also sent was about the artwork, saying that, the sort of like the main cover was deemed too graphic for some retailers, and so they used the back of the CD booklet as alternate cover art, which is what Mike held up first, and then Jake and I held up the sort of generally accepted main cover art there. From a composition perspective and like atmosphere, I do prefer the alternate cover art. I think it's much nicer to the eye. But then again, this is not an album about being nice, so I don't dislike the main cover art. It's just sort of like the artist in me looks at the alternate and goes, "Oh yeah, there's a nice splash of yellow there, and that X frames it rather nicely," sort of thing.
I really like this cover art. I like the alternate cover art as my front cover. That's the way I bought it, so that's the way I keep it. Like the way that the X is formed of those girders. Hughesheim has a very unique style, and it's evident here. I just like it. I think it's different, and it's cool, and it's classy. This version, Eddie in the electric chair, desolate, bleak, but just a ray of sunshine. Jake, any thoughts?
Hughesheim's phenomenal. I love Hughesheim's artwork. He did Whitesnake self-titled. He did Megadeth Countdown to Extinction, Through the World Needs a Hero, Slaughter Stick It To You, Hurricane Slave to the Thrill. He did one of my favorite Helix album covers, It's a Business Doing Pleasure, which is hysterically awesome. I just that album cover just makes me laugh every time I see it.
Personally, I love this album.
You've got something by Hughesheim in your he's the Rush guy too. He's absolutely the Rush guy. You have something by Hughesheim in your collection, I guarantee it. He's great, but this album's very... It's not pretty. Like, he's got the entrails hanging out and his head's popping off and his brain's there. But even... it doesn't look like it's... Yeah, it doesn't look like it's rendered. Like, it's not 100% like... You look at other... It's kind of messy and gritty, kind of. And I kind of like that. Like, the 90s... Mike will know what I'm talking about. In the 90s, there was a lot
Well,
of...
they are real models that he built, basically.
Oh, they are.
They're not drawings. I've seen some behind-the-scenes footage of him like photoshopping the little... Because it's not life-size. It's a little Eddie, basically.
I did not know.
Yeah.
I did not know that, so that explains it. But the 90s were kind of this... There was a lot of stylistic that was dirty and grimy. And when I look at this and someone holds this up, if I knew nothing about like what era this was, I would be like, that's something from the 90s. It just,
Yeah.
there is an ultra violence too to the 90s, and it fits everything of that era. And I was born in 1990. This feels like my childhood. Um, I think it's great. I know there's probably people who think they're better Maiden, and I think there's a couple better Maiden covers, but it's one of my favorite.
There you go. Well, folks, I said this episode was going to be an hour and a half, and I was wrong, but I hope you enjoyed it. Before we go, let's give our album a ranking out of 10. I'll go first. And I can't remember what I ranked this when I reviewed all the Maiden albums way back in the day, but I think today I would give this a solid 8.5 out of 10. Harrison?
For me, this is a 4.75 out of 5, which is 9.5.
9.5. Yeah. Jake?
I said this was either my second or third favorite Maiden album, and I give it a solid 9.
There you go. So from 8.5 to 9.5 out of 10. You got a pretty unanimous opinion here about the X Factor. So Harrison and I will be back to talk about a single and a compilation. But after that, we will be doing the Virtual 11 album. And guess what? We'll be doing it with Jake, not from State Farm. So Jake, thank you for joining us here for the X Factor tonight. Foreshadowing. We'll see Jake again, and we will see you again on 50 Years of Iron Maiden. Check out the store at tpublic.com. You can get a Grab a Stack of Rock shirt, support the show, support us. We'll see you next time. Like, subscribe, and share. Up the irons.